Hey everybody, Mike Feldbauer from the Flagler County Drug Court Foundation coming to you from the Flagler Voice podcast studios here in Palm Coast. And I have a special guest with me today to tell her story of her road to recovery. Her name is Tori. I met Tori just this last weekend at the International Overdose Awareness Walk Over the Bridge. That was on August 31st. And we made an announcement that night that we're looking for more people that might want to come and tell the story to help people that are on their walk for recovery. And she was first up. And we are really excited to have her with us in the studio this morning. So, Tori, say hi.
Hi.
And start your story.
Okay. So I started using drugs when I was 13. I started smoking weed because it was most accessible, and 13 was actually when I transferred from my Catholic school straight to a public school, and weed was very prominent in the public school I went to, as I'm sure it was in most public schools. So it was very easy to grab, very easy to get on a daily basis. And I can remember always, like growing up, I always felt or knew that I was going to try drugs or try a substance. Just because I had known about it for so long, and I had always heard from my parents about what it does, and of course I heard how bad it was and how much it ruined people's lives, but all I heard was that there was a way to not feel what I was feeling every day, or not feel, period. And I'd known about it for so long because I was born predisposed, and my biological mother was an addict. And my parents that I live with now had adopted me when I was 2 years old. They were foster parents for a very long time, and then they finally chose to adopt, and it was me, which I do thank God for. And they had me in therapy from a very young age. I can remember as far back as I can remember I was in therapy. They suspected that I had a mood disorder when I was very young as well. But I had diagnosed ADHD, anxiety, and depression. And I had very bad suicidal ideation when I was younger. I can remember being 9 and 10 years old, banging my head on walls and banging myself in the head with a hairbrush or whatever I could grab that was closest, because I would be so upset and I would have all these emotions inside of me that I didn't know how to handle, and I just wanted them out and gone. I am diagnosed with borderline personality disorder as well, which my parents had always done their best to get me in the therapy programs and get me with the specialist and get me with the evaluations, because they knew that it was going to be a hard road for me whether or not I did do drugs, just because of the dysregulation of my brain. So when I was younger, I can remember I went to a Catholic school. I went to Catholic school up until 6th grade, and my parents and my whole family is very religious and very, very strong in their faith. And I can remember I had never felt that connection, or even the yearning for a connection with a higher power, with God, because I just felt like it was very trivial, and I felt like it was very unfair. And I used to think it was stupid. I used to think people were stupid for believing that there was something greater than us and all-powerful, and yet there were all these things going on and all these people suffering. And whenever I did try to believe in God, I would find myself getting very angry and very upset, because I felt it was very unfair that I had to live the way I did or feel the way I did, and there was a God up there that had the power to change those things or make those things better. And he didn't do anything to intervene. So I can remember going through the motions at church and praying with my parents and praying before meals. And I was just always not really there when it was happening. It was just like a task, like a chore I had to get done. And I can, I can remember I always had the woe is me mindset, and the world was against me. I always felt that way. And for a very long time, I used to like repeatedly say that life had handed me a bad deal of cards. And so that was my excuse for all of my self-destructive and self-harming behavior, because I felt and I figured that there was no chance for me anyways, or that the odds were always stacked up too high against me for me to even try or even want to try. For a very long time, and up until recently even, I felt like there was no chance that I was going to be a productive member of society or a regular person that did regular people things and had a license and a diploma and a job. I never thought that those things were in the cards for me. I gave up. I gave up before I had even touched drugs. I remember the first time that I had tried to end my life, I was 10 or 11, and it was before dance class. And I just woke up so upset every morning. I never felt happy. I never felt like I could accept myself or accept life for what it was or the way it was, which always worked against me because I was always trying to find a loophole or a way to get through things without actually getting through the things. Just kind of push the things past or put them in a little box and bury that box deep inside the earth because I didn't know how to deal with it and I didn't think I could. And I started self-harming before I started using drugs as well. I believe I started self-harming in 6th grade. And that was kind of, I always say that that was the first thing I was addicted to because it gave me that release and it gave me that control, and it also made my pain real. I remember every time that I would hurt myself and I'd be able to see it, I wouldn't feel as crazy or I wouldn't feel like it was all in my head. And I also would feel like people couldn't deny that I was in pain now, because now it's not a mental disorder or a dysregulation. Now it's something physical on my body, and you can tell I'm in pain, because if that scar were on your body, you'd be in pain. So you can't tell me I'm not feeling hurt. And I do think that a big part of my substance abuse had to do with control, because for a very long time I had no control over my thoughts or my thought patterns or even the way I would talk to myself. It didn't feel like it was in my control, at least. I was very mean to myself. I bullied myself for very long. Up until recently, I just started getting better about the way that I talk to myself and treat myself. But I always just felt like I shouldn't be alive, whether it was I don't deserve to be alive or it's not fair for me to have to be alive in these conditions. That's what I used to say. I always just felt like I shouldn't be here. And so instead of ending my life, I started using drugs very heavily. And a big part of my drug abuse was kind of like a part of my suicidal ideation, because every time I would use, I knew I was using way too much for my little body. And there was always that thought in my head that maybe this will be the time that I overdose and I stay gone and I don't come back and no one finds me and I don't get to the hospital in time. Every time I used, there was a part of me that hoped that it would end my life. And there was a part of me that was in control. And like I was the boss and I had the power when I was buying those drugs and I was giving them to myself. And I was controlling how I felt because I knew that when I bought that drug, I was going to feel this way. So I was in control of how I felt, at least for that day or at least for that high. And that definitely fed into the addiction of it and the prolonged using of it. But when I first started using, I can remember like clear as day, and I have a terrible memory, but I can remember clear as day the first time that I smoked weed. And I did not like it, but you can best believe the hour it wore off, I was back in the bathroom asking my friend if I could hit it again, because it was different than what I had ever felt before, and I was only used to feeling depressed and miserable and like an imposter. Like I wasn't really a human being, and I wasn't supposed to be there. And when I smoked, I was a human being and I was with other people that were doing exactly the same thing, and I didn't have to feel anything except for high and tingly, giggly and tingly. And I can remember after I smoked, of course she was like, just hit it a few times. And of course, addicts don't know moderation. I hit it as many times as I could in that 5-minute bathroom period. And the rest of the day at school, I was hitting my limbs over and over again because I couldn't feel them. And I was freaking out. I was in gym class going like this because my whole body was numb and I didn't know it was supposed to be like that. And I was just like, I can't feel my body. Like, no, my arms, they're going to atrophy. Like, they're going to fall asleep and I'm not going to be able to get up. And it was actually kind of scary. Like, I felt kind of scared, but I loved it. I didn't put weed down, not even for a day or an hour, for at least 2 or 3 years after that. Even though I didn't really like it, it was just an unworldly feeling, and I hated everything that the world made me feel. So that's what I wanted. And then very shortly thereafter that, the same friend that I had started smoking with had introduced me to Percocet. So am I allowed to use names here? Because I know, okay. Had introduced me to Percocet. And so I tried to perk with her. I had started sneaking out. I had started doing all the stereotypical bad kid things. I started getting suspended from school for smoking. I wasn't smart. I would get caught all the time. And my parents used to say that they kind of thought that when the way I would do it so blatantly and obviously was like a cry for help. And I honestly think I wasn't crying for help. I think I just didn't care about myself or my life or my reputation or my future or the damage that it was doing to any of those things. I didn't care. And it made me a person. For a very long time after I got clean, it was hard for me to identify who I was because for so long, who I was an addict. And I was fine with that because I had an identity. And once I had quit the narcotics but was still smoking weed, I was the pothead. And I was fine with that because I had an identity. It gave me a personality. It gave me something I was. Because I didn't know who I was for so long because I had spent my developmental years being angry and mad and cursing the world every morning that I woke up. And then I spent my teenage years too high out of my mind to understand who I was. So it took me a while to figure that out, but I can remember holding on to and almost feeling proud that was like I had an identity, that it was solidified, and that's who I was. I was an addict, and what I did was drugs, and that's what people knew me for, and that was fine because they knew me. And the first thing that I'm taking the Percocet, I had snuck out of the house. I had gotten an Uber. My parents like to call me a cat because I have more than 9 lives because I should be dead 10 times over. All the situations that I had put myself in. It's a blessing that I didn't go through any more pain than what I had put myself through, that no one else had inflicted any more trauma or pain onto me for all of the terribly unsafe situations that I had put myself in. And I snuck out with my friend and I went to her house, and her way too old for her boyfriend had given her perks, and she had given me one. And I can like see myself right now talking about it on her bed. Like, I get disgusted when I think of how I used to look because I was like a zombie. I wasn't alive. But I can see myself on her bed, and I can remember just like over and over again lifting my head up and then having it float down. And I felt amazing, honestly, in the moment I did. I didn't know what was happening and I didn't know where I was. And that was amazing. I didn't have to be conscious or be alive. And that was the best escape that I could have had at the time, not having to be alive or be conscious. After I had tried that perk, I had gone kind of straight into Xanax, which ended up being my drug of choice because it was much cheaper than Percocet, but did the same no consciousness out of body effect. And from ages 13 to 15 and a little bit of 16, I was just a zombie. I can't remember any of the family trips I went on. I can't remember any of the get-togethers or the gatherings or the events or even any of the times I saw my friends. I can't remember not a single day of school past the age of 13 in the first month at that public school. I can't remember any of it. I can tell you things that happened because when I go through my camera roll, I can say, oh yeah, that was that day. And I can kind of piece together a memory from the photo, but I can't, like, from memory or from heart tell you what happened or what I did. And I missed out on so many great things with my family. We used to go on all these family vacations, like, all the time. And we went to really nice places. We went out of the country and stuff. We went to, like, beachy places and stuff, all the places that I want to go to now. And I remember sometimes I'll bring it up to my parents, oh, I want to go here. We went there, Tori. We went there when you were 15. Oh, we did? And I think that's so sad because those were such amazing experiences that I could have really had with my whole family at a young age. But thank God I'm alive because now I can recreate them and remember them. But
Can we get into that part of your life?
what part?
Okay. The part of your life where you started to become alive again,
Mm-hmm.
who you really are,
Mm-hmm.
some of your road to recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because I see you now, and what I see now in my imagination can't relate to the stories you're telling me who you were then. And we want to get to the point where we're starting to give the people that are listening to this the hope that they can have to get from where you were to where you are now. So talk to us about your start in the world of recovery. I know there's been some bumps in the road, and that it's not all been the smoothest in the world, though rarely have I met anybody that's had a smooth ride in that area. And give us an idea of what that was for you.
My first rehab that I was sent to was very much against my will, as you can imagine. I was 14 and I had gone to a place called Rosecrans in Chicago, or near Chicago. I can't remember the exact place it was in. But there are a lot of people from the rehabs and a lot of teachers from my schools that I have to thank because they were part of the reason I stayed alive for so long. Rosecrans definitely planted the seed. For my first few weeks there, I didn't do anything. I didn't get out of bed. All the kids hated me because we couldn't leave the unit to go outside unless everyone got up to leave the unit, and I was not leaving the unit. I didn't go to any of my groups. I was always just sleeping in bed. And then I made two really good friends up there, one of whom I was on the phone with this morning, who's on her own road to recovery, that lives in Michigan. And they kind of, Josie, that's her name, she kind of got me out of it because she wanted to, like, go outside for group and, like, go for a walk, and she would get very upset at me when I wouldn't leave the room to do that. So I kind of got out of that slump and I started going to groups, and I ended up leading some groups and writing down the questions for when we did NA book study, which was one of my favorite groups. And I kind of got, like, a real taste of what focusing your pain on recovery rather than the drugs was like. And I did like it, but I knew that when I got out, I was going to go right back. I didn't really have any real intentions of stopping. I was kind of going through the motions and playing their game so that I could get out. But I do remember enjoying actually putting my heart into recovery and reading the big book and writing questions to talk about in the groups and stuff. But shortly after Rosecrans, this day out of Rosecrans, I relapsed. And then I was just kind of back on that using path. And then when I was 16, I was sent to, I don't even know what this place was called. It got shut down for staff abuse, but I was only there for a week. I ended up getting beat up by a girl because I talked a lot and I didn't know when to shut up. And I had these big, like, macho girl behavior, and I'm like 50 pounds soaking wet. So I went home with a black eye, and I got sent home a week early. I can't really credit much of my recovery to there just because I don't remember it. But I was sent there because I had overdosed in school, and I had to get wheeled out by paramedics in the school hallway, which was and is a very haunting moment for me. And it is definitely something that I think back to whenever I find myself thinking, oh, it wasn't that bad. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And everybody saw it. And it was embarrassing to live like that. And then just a few weeks after that, my parents had found a different rehab, which I credit most of my life to. It's called Muirwood in California. The week that I was supposed to go, I ended up running away from home and staying with this man that tried to sex traffic me, and he ended up going to court and everything. Well, that's a whole thing. And that was very traumatic, but and it's crazy to say and think about it, I wanted to do that and put my life in that much danger rather than go to rehab and get clean and get better. But of course, cops ended up taking me home, and I ended up going to Muirwood, and I can remember it was so heartbreaking when my dad dropped me off. My dad's like my best friend. He is my everything. I wouldn't be half the person I am today if it wasn't for him. We do everything together. And he's never given up on me, and I know how extremely hard that had to have been in so many instances. And I've asked him before, and he said, I always knew that you were going to get better, even when no one else thought you were. I always knew that you had so much more in you. And I could never thank him or repay him enough for believing in me the way he did. But he dropped me off, and I can remember his sad little face, his teddy bear face crying. But when I went to Muirwood, I remember the first person that I saw when I walked in. She was like this short little hippie with like these big hippie baggy pants on and her little Converse. And she is someone that I still talk to every now and then as well on her road to recovery too. And she was my first friend there. And she was very inviting, very welcoming, made me feel like I was going to be okay, made me feel calmer. And I mean, I loved Muirwood. I had the best therapist that I had ever had at that point. And one of the best things about her was that she made me do the work myself. And there were so many sessions that I had with her where I like wouldn't talk because like I would say I didn't know what to say, but I just didn't want to have to work through it all. And she would sit there and we would sit there in silence until I spoke. She would not say a word. And there were so many sessions that were just silence, and I'd walk out and I'd slam her door and I'd walk back to the room with my arms crossed. And like, she doesn't know what she's doing. What the hell is this? She's not gonna talk. She's gonna make me talk first. She's not gonna say a word. I was angry at her for like my first couple weeks there, but then I ended up talking, and I ended up really, really loving her, and she really helped me figure out a lot about myself. And she was the first person that I had opened up to about a lot of things. Like my biological parents, I had always said that I never felt anything about it and that it never affected me in any way. And she definitely helped me see that that wasn't the truth, or at least tried to, because I was still very much in denial. I didn't want to admit that my biological parents had an effect on me or the way I felt. And one of my friends had passed away while I was in there, and it was the first time that I had lost someone and didn't have drugs to immediately go to numb it out. And she helped me work through that too, and we actually did something that I did again after I lost another friend. She had me write a letter to him and then read it out loud, and then we went outside and we buried it in the little fire pit. And I always thank her for that, because I don't think I would have been able to process his death by myself at all. And I mean, she was just amazing. She always made me feel like I really had someone on my side and someone right next to me to help me through everything. But she wasn't like coddling or anything, so I was like able to figure. She gave me the tools, and I just had to build it from there.
I've got, excuse me, a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be willing to come back?
Yes, of course.
Because we're not done yet, but I think there's a lot more to say that we don't have time to do it all in one session. And So I just want to make sure that before I close this, and we still have a few minutes to go, that we spent an enormous amount of time in your early stages, and now we're seeing some of the hope developing. And I want to get to have people, I hope they're grabbing enough interest in this when they're hearing it and seeing it, that they want to come back and hear the rest of the story, because I certainly do. So that's what I wanted to ask at this point. So go ahead. We got a few more minutes, so continue to talk a little bit more, and then I'll give you the sign that we're getting ready to close.
Yeah, so she gave me the tools, and I was able to build up who I was from there. And Muirwood was like just such a good experience. It was one of the first times that felt like I was able to experience things. We had a garden, and we were able to grow things, and we were able to pick berries that we had grown and then bake them in a waffle maker at our homes. Like, it was just so many amazing experiences. We went on outings. We would go to the movie theater sometimes. We ended up going to meetings every Wednesday when we had the privileges, if we didn't like mess anything up throughout the week. And we went to this like almost like an adventure park one time with like team building exercises, and that was really cool. But I credit a lot to Muirwood because it was one of the first times that I felt myself experiencing all those things and not thinking it would be better with a drug or I wish I was on drugs. It helped me realize that there is a way to live happy, clean, and sober. And it showed me that I just have to be able to work through my issues and be surrounded by the right people to make it work. It was very much a spiritual rehab. They had a saying, we had accountability group every morning and evening, and we would go around and we would set SMART goals for the day. And we would say how our mind, our body, and our spirit is feeling, which I actually have tattooed on my arm, because it was something that I had always loved. But when I had gotten sober and went into remission from cancer this year, I started going to a hot yoga class that I love so much. I cry at the end of every class. And the first class that I went to, the teacher said, "Are your mind, body, and spirit aligned?" And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to go get that tattooed right now. Because it resonated very heavily with me. And for it to be something said in that class that I enjoy so much and something that I heard in that rehab, because I went to Muirwood twice, I knew that it was something that I wanted to carry with me forever. So.
Sounds like maybe we leave it at this point, and we'll talk about the rest of your road to recovery up to the point that you're on now. And I know there was some drops in the middle. It was not all smooth. We want to talk about how those things that got you back, and then what helped bring you back to where you are now. So everybody, if you will take time to listen to this, and we will announce when part 2 is on. This part will be on this Thursday, which I believe is September 4th. Mm-hmm. And the part 2 will be on the following Thursday. So everybody, again, this is Mike Feldbauer from the Flagler County Drug Court Foundation, coming to you from Flagler Voice Podcast Studios here in Palm Coast, saying, don't give up the hope. Hope is always there for you.